is there, God.
Yeah, man, Sunday is here. And today we've lost an hour. So I'm kind of still sleepy. But
I want to get a joke. That frightened me, because when I look on the clock and see 10:45, I say, what? No, man. And I say, the thing gone back.
you know what is worse? When you don't look on your phone or your watch, which changes automatically when
Right.
you go in the kitchen, and the microwave and everything is still saying the old time, so you think you have an hour. You don't really have an hour.
I'm telling you, it rocked me. But be that as it may, we are here, and
Yes,
you know,
today's Sunday and we're here.
and if
Good
it's a
afternoon.
Sunday, it is Sunday Scoops.
Sunday Scoops again.
Yeah.
And today, we're only going to be doing an hour. But before we even start the show, we're asking you, please go to YouTube, Instagram, like Yard Media Sunday Scoops. Please tell a friend, have them come on too. We need to bring up our subscribers, Richie.
Absolutely.
And today we're dealing with Mr. Freddie. Big Ship McGregor.
Big Ship McGregor. Freddie has had an interesting career, you know. When you talk about, and I guess most of our musicians or artists out of Jamaica are all self-made, but I think Freddie McGregor is a quintessential illustration of a self-made artist. My own connection with Freddie basically started with that album, as you just mentioned, Big Ship. It was one of the first pieces of work that I acquired from him. Would have been early 1980s, if I remember correctly. Just get married, have a little GTR sound system in our house.
Yeah, man, 1982.
Yeah, man. And I went out on a buying spree, a little record shop up in a halfway tree there.
And you had GTR, and then you had the GTR Black Magic.
Yeah, I eventually upgraded to the Black Magic too. But the key with them at them time is that you have your nice turntable and your amps and preamp and cassette player, and then you have your the CD players with equalizers. And
yeah, later on the CD player came in. That was the late 80s though.
Yeah. But you know, that was when I acquired that album, Big Ship, and then got turned on to Freddie McGregor. And then you start to step back and look at his time singing with the Clarendonians. You know, them should lock up Coxsone for child endangerment.
Child labor.
Because Freddie would have been in that
7 years old.
60s period, he would have been 7 years old. They had him singing along with the Clarendonians. It was Ernest Wilson and Peter Austin.
Right.
And he joined them as Little Freddie. So I go, Little Freddie.
Little Freddie.
Right. Singing
and then when they sang in the duet, or the duo, because man and woman, the duet, two man, the duo. When they did the duo, they were Freddie and Fitzy.
Right. But again, this is Freddie. He wasn't even 10-year-old. Could have barely, breast milk still around down the mouth corner, And was Freddie say, he came to Kingston, come out of Clarendon, and but something else to got. A lot of these musicians, Clarendon them come from.
Yes.
So. But let's give the listeners a little taste of what we're talking about. Just
we're going to just run the first three tracks. 1966 was the year with the duo Freddie and Fitzy with a song called Why Did You Do It? Another one called Do Good, and then another one, What You Gonna Do About It? Yeah, and that last song, What You Gonna Do About It, you could hear Ernest's voice maturing now to the voice that we know. But Freddie still has
a baby boy voice. That lick over tune, What You Gonna Do About It, was Doris Troy's song. And but again, this was a like a bluesy R&B number, because at the time we kind of never figured out where we were yet as far as the music was concerned.
We still had the
the ska influence was still there.
Yep. I think this was 1960, 66, 67.
The music had not started to change. Well, it had just about started to change.
That one was like, you could hear the...
But the Clarendonians, though, was noted for that, largely in that ska era. They did a lot of other songs. Rudy Gone to Jail, Shooby Dooby Doo, Rudy Bam Bam, You Can Be Happy. And this was after they basically came into prominence, because in those early days, most of this singing was for the talent shows. That was all the rage at the time. And of course, the Clarendonians, among some of the groups that were dominant during the talent show period, which is essentially how they came to the attention of Dodd. And then Dodd decided that he would start to record them. And the rest, as we know it, is history. Eh?
Yep. Freddie played a very, I didn't realize until I did this research that he was also a drummer.
That would have come at a little later period, though. I think in that, what I found as I said, we look at the research work, and I should point out, I think it's a good time to point out that, we are in fact hatching a plot that is a much more comprehensive discussion on Freddie's career, which will feature a number of people who have been a part of the development of that career. But, in fact, we were planning to have Gussie Clark on today, but circumstances didn't make that possible. But he nevertheless decided to go ahead, give a sort of an introduction, if you will, of Freddie's career. And we're going to take that in a much, much larger
might span about 4 shows.
Absolutely. But, Freddie basically grew up in front of the microphone, grew up in front of the Jamaican audience as a performer. And he himself, David Katz, writing about him, made a point that he said he came to Kingston with the objective of trying to make it in the music. He didn't have a lot of schooling, and in the course of time, because after the Clarendonians dissipated, he basically spent most of his time at Studio One, doing a lot of backup singing.
Probably more than that, he probably was a gopher.
He was a?
Probably a gopher. Buy some weed, buy some cigarette.
That would not be, I wouldn't be surprised about that either. But he said he spent a lot of time, and it was a feature of the period too, that 1960s, early 1970s, where once you're in the studio, if an artist come in the studio and have the makings of a good song, everybody participated in, providing some harmonies or some backup and so on. And so, after the Clarendonians thing, this is what he spent a lot of his time doing. Of course, that helped him. So by the time he got into the 1970s, he had this, everybody in the 1970s was a soul boy period. So he had this big afro and him afro pick in him back pocket, but him not had no money, and him say on a number of occasions he contemplated going back to the country, but not on a country either. And his mother and and his siblings them look to him for try and do something, and him say that was kind of what caused him to persevere, So he saw everybody who came through Studio One. I got a sense, though, that in that early period, although Coxsone utilized him a lot, he didn't come out front as a solo artist for a long, long time. Eh?
But he did a couple of cover versions of other songs. But as we've discussed in previous shows, that Studio One and also Bunny Lee and all these other guys would have different artists do the same song.
Right.
And 2 of the songs that he did were cover versions of what other artists had done. So like Beat Down Babylon, Junior Bells, he did a cover version of that. And so we're going to hit this the listeners up with Beat Down Babylon, Freddie McGregor's version in 1972. And
Keeping You Is My Goal.
Was Pledging My Love, which was a cover version of Johnny Ace. And what the melody is from again? There's another song.
What I can tell you is that, you know, it's interesting that him cover that song because Johnny Ace was all the rave at the time, coming out of that, you know, early blues R&B period out of America. And in fact, Johnny Ace had a very tragic end, you know, career, whole heap of promise. In fact, he had been on a tour to release his his only album. If I'm not mistaken, the title of the album was exactly the title of that song, Forever My Darling. And he had about 3 or 4 hits on the album itself and was across America promoting the album. And the thing sell good, everything going well for him. And the man waiting in the dressing room with some other participants on the show, he decided to play Russian roulette with one of them. One of them produced a little snub-nosed 38 revolver. And him is the first man to take a try with the thing and blow out his brains. Can you imagine the concert, the people come to the show and waiting on this man to perform and hear this explosion, and that was it. Tragedy. You know, but the song, though, was a brute of a song. And I think Freddie, even as a youngster, did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
With
that. Baby.
Yeah. Yep. I may hear some laughing in my ears, corner.
No, it was a key I touch on the keyboard.
I wonder what that was. But anyway, so Freddie is basically wetting his feet as a solo artist, and this is the 1970s. As I said earlier, he is trying to find his way. He used to live at he was living with Al Campbell, somewhere around a Delacree Lane, and him said things now go on too good. You know, him still comb up him afro and him up and down, you know, and then bell bottom, barefoot pants, and he came get a singing gig. But him said nothing now go on, and he met Leroy Horsemouth Wallace. So one day Horsemouth drive come around him yard and say, "Yo, come with me." I said, "Come with you, we go do it." He said, "Just come with me, man. You're my like a printer, so I carry go meet some like uptown boy." And he said, them youth are some like a rich uptown youth who have band and all them things, but I'm not a singer. And I introduce you in the band as a singer. I think the group, it would have been Generation Gap.
I remember that.
Right, and so he said that's how he came into the Generation Gap band. And of course, as you will remember, Derek Harriet talk about the same thing, you know, when he was on the show with us, God. Him saying in them days as a band, you compete with the disco, you know, so you have to know.
You have to write.
Yeah, everything. Him say you can sing everything. So he learned, you know, travel. Him say the exposure with them little uptown youth, you know, introduce him to a different kind of life. Because I'm saying him down in the ghetto there, not now go on, you know, him is a linear approach in life I take. So when him meet them little uptown youth, you know, it sort of open up. And it opened him up to a whole heap of different kind of music. Every time the Philadelphia sound was all the rave in Jamaica. Yeah. So you have to can sing everything, you know, soul, funky, everything. Because, you know, if you know, do that, once the disco man turn on film disco, you know, and if the band can't match the disco, dog name your supper. And him say he did that for a number of years. And then he moved on to Soul Syndicate, which was an even bigger, more established band. And over time, he became the lead singer in Soul Syndicate. So it sort of fits in when you're looking at Freddie's repertoire over the years. You know, you couldn't necessarily pigeonhole it. You know, some singers said the man had us strictly reggae or dancehall.
Right.
Freddie was, you know, he had that depth of experience covering all of the genres. And you could see, especially in the later years, the 80s and the 90s, how all of that experience impacted his work. But
then came, Richie, Bobby Babylon.
well, Bobby Babylon now, interesting point, because him say he must now, by 75, him start to tour with some other man now who, you know, outside of him Soul Syndicate thing, him still spending time with Studio One at the studio. And he got into, you know, the company of someone who connect him with 12 Tribe. And him said the 12 Tribe experience now expose him to some other things. Because I read the Bible. Me think he must be kind of, it take a special breed of man for read the Bible 2 and 3 times. And them man, I think Freddie said him read the Bible about 3 or 4 times, you know, right? From cover to cover. How much time you read the Bible?
Me?
Yeah.
More per time, but not from cover to cover. I attempted reading it cover to cover, but I think I stopped short of Micah and some of the later books in the Old Testament.
Well,
The New Testament I've read from, you know, through and through. But the Old Testament, especially when I reached like Leviticus, and Garth begot Richie, and Richie begot Magic, and you know, a whole heap of chapters I tell you the generation.
Yeah, well, you know, Rastaman, so we do a chapter a day. But him say the chapter a day thing now, you know, it kind of increased his own personal consciousness. And it led him to start writing prolifically. And, you know, this thing with the Rasta enlightenment, and him say, you have some other man who are Rasta, but them are Christian. And so when them buck up now for a reasoning, him say, out of those reasoning, the lyrics for certain songs just come. And him say, at that point, am I right? And it is out of that period, Bobby Babylon. There are a couple of songs.
Yeah, that was an interesting album. You have songs like We Need More Love, What Difference Does It Make? How Could I Leave? Then you have Bobby Babylon, of course. And one of the songs on there was the song that says, I'm an Rasta, I'm a revolutionist. Yeah, and then there's another song, Wine of Violence.
Yeah.
Go Away Pretty Woman. And
Yeah,
this
one
was
in
done
Rastaman camp. Yeah, because in fact, I think when Studio One started to dissipate, Freddie was still there. Freddie coming like you have someone with a Jamaican, no matter how bad things is, the man that say, me have to turn off the light, you know. Right? It looked like
So
Freddie
it was a
took
main
the
light
decision
turn offer.
that him is not leaving Studio One until the light turn off, and him have to turn off the light. But we're going to come to that in a bit. Let me get a taste of Freddie.
Yeah, man, a couple of the songs. Starting out with the title track, Babylon, 1978-79. All right, that was Wine of Violence. And before that, you heard Go Away Pretty Woman. And before that, you heard the title track, Bobby Babylon.
Bobby Babylon.
I don't understand him saying Go Away Pretty Woman, and at the same time, Mighty Diamonds was doing another song called Pretty Woman, Don't You Go Away. So, they need to make up them.
You know, me tell you, say you go buy liquor in the party. I tell you,
I'm glad to buy the liquor.
you
I'm
work
going to
hard
spend
for
time with you, my friends. That's the most
yeah,
important
work hard.
thing.
But again, this late 70s, because this was the period now just about when Sugar Minott had started to drift away from Studio One, because from, you know, the feedback I was getting is that around this time, Coxsone had become very, very paranoid, because him basically say every artist who come in at the studio now will try to do something differently, as that him come for sabotage. Remember, him always have this saying, Jackson, where you come for to mash up the business. But him say, it's like it was much more profound with that now because there was this fear because by this time a couple other studios were now opening up. The Black Ark was now in existence. Channel One had established themselves. Of course, Prince Buster was around the corner from long time.
And
but
Lee Scratch Perry was
and,
doing his thing.
yeah, with Scratch Perry with the thing. Him say and Joe Gibbs at the same time. So him say these other studios were experimenting with the sound, you know. And according to him, the Studio One sound was a little on the flat side, and his job was to try to bring that up. And him say playing with the bands, the Generation Gap and the Soul Syndicate band, you introduce a little of that essence of the soul, you know. I think we talk about that with Sly. Him say playing the nightclub circuit, it automatically
AJ Brown said the same thing.
coming into your music.
And Wayne Harmon said the same thing. All
Absolutely. We're up on a break though. Let's do take break and we come right back. Track.
1980. This was in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, Richie, when the hallmark of when you're dressed up to go out, you have to be in a
tracksuit and your bobby socks.
And the
you have another North Star, Adidas or Puma. Yeah, Puma or Adidas.
Some man used to wear them Clarks with the tracksuit to talk to him.
No, bad man, that's a bad man style.
Very smart. And
that's a bad man style. But, you know, this was, as you said, 79, 80, Freddie is now finding his voice.
You can hear a distinct Freddie voice.
Absolutely. And at the same time, too, he had become so much more comfortable in the music business because by now he was also assisting some other artists and in terms of producing their work. I mean, he did some production work for Judy Mowat on her album called Black Woman.
Yeah,
and he also did some
bad
work
album.
Yeah?
That was a bad album.
Yeah, well, he produced that. And he also worked with Johnny Osborne and Jennifer Lara on some of their own material as well. But so, 1980s, he, by this time, the whole Coxsone would have by now moved his operations to New York. And so, you know, the whatever was Studio One had to a large extent dissipated because everybody now gone to Channel One. Sugar Minott had done a lot of experimentation and kind of influenced the direction. Sugar Minott, you know, I don't think we recognize the influence that Sugar Minott had on the music.
He revisited all of them Studio One rhythm and
Right.
breathed new life in them.
And Freddie too, because Freddie also, because he was now playing as a drummer with his role with the band, Soul Syndicate and so on. He was one of those who helped refresh a lot of that Studio One, the Studio One catalog. But by 1981, that is when, in my books, Freddie, you know, basically opened my own attention with the album Big Ship Sailing on the Ocean. In fact,
there are two songs on there, the title track, of course, and then there's the original mix before he revisited it in the 90s, Stop Loving You. You heard Big Ship, Holy Mount Zion, and Sweet Lady, and the original mix of Stop Loving You, 1982 on the Big Ship album.
You hear the Rastaman influence
man.
big time now, you know, established dreadlocks, and, you know, that is basically what lead in terms of his music development. Big Ship, well, first of all, the first album, Bobby Babylon, had kind of introduced him to the Jamaican audience, right? So, you know, Jamaica now know who he was. But by the time the 80s roll in and he had started to throw these works, because around 80, 81, Marley died in 81, right?
Yeah, May 11th.
Right. And so I think everybody is looking around for find, you know, we have this funny thing about us instead of
Find a replacement.
thing. We look for a replacement for Bob Marley. And, I think Black Uhuru was deemed, one of the potential replacement. But people were also looking at Freddie because, his catalog was growing. The work was clean. Eh?
Yeah.
Nothing that
And he was also a clean man too.
And yeah, he was a devout Rasta man as well. And you sort of, that influences, you hear it in the lyrics of the music.
Plus he was polished.
And more importantly too, he was touring. His reputation overseas had grown. The demand for his music had grown. And Steady, as you say, largely one of those artists for me that shaped the music of the 1980s that was coming out of Jamaica. Your thoughts?
Well, the thing is that, as I said, his music was polished. It was in keeping with what was happening at the time because Jamaica was still in the 80s, was still in a soul period, based on certain. Of course, Rastaman thing I go and say.
The Rasta was big too.
He was now catching the attention of the diaspora. So again, he was touring. And the interesting thing about him too was he was writing his own lyrics.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He wasn't doing much cover versions then, But and he had one of those Maxi Priest look, which again, if you want to make it in the industry, well, you have to appeal to the female base.
And he targeted his music to a large extent, a fair amount of lovers rock.
Songs like Sweet Lady.
Yeah.
Stop Loving You. Those songs. But Big Ship was what the song that put him on the map. And it was so successful that he actually created the Big Ship label.
That too, and it also helped. I think he signed with Ras Records.
Yes.
And essentially, didn't he sign with there's another US company, Polydor Records, one of them?
I think it was, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, but this was one of his early signing with Ras Records, which again, as you say, the diaspora is now grabbing a lot of his music. It's funny that in those days, in the 70s and the 80s, the diaspora that helped drag reggae music right around the world. And today, contributing to the volumes in terms of the number of sides that them sell. But it's not having the same effect. The technology has now changed the way how people consume the music. But
right.
Be that as it may. He had also done some covers. Guantanamera, which is a pretty big song, a big standard. Mm-hmm. And he challenged it and issued a reggae cover of that.
And songs like That Girl, Groovy Situation,
right.
1987, he did that. But then there were the things like Don't Hurt My Feelings, again, 1987. Push Come to Shove, I'm Coming Home. Crossover songs like All in the Same Boat. Other songs like Can't Get You Out of My Mind, which had that nice lovers rock, even though it was a bit on the fast side. So let's just give the listeners a little bit. And just to let you know, we're wrapping up a 1 hour show. We've shortened our show. So just get ready to spend more Sunday afternoon with your family and just catch Sunday Scoops again. But let's kick it off, 1984. Can't Get You Out of My Mind.
Hi there. If you enjoyed that clip, go on over to our website at yardmedia.com where you can watch the entire broadcast at your leisure. And while you're there, why don't you check out our other reggae music features? And before you leave, pick up some of our Jamaican reggae merchandise, and hey, don't forget to tell your friends.
My name is Garth, otherwise known as Big G.
My name is Richie Blackford.